This is deep dish, right?
Yeah, but let's get deep.
So I'm going deep on both sides.
Luis, man, welcome to the platform. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Thanks for having me.
It's
an honor
we
to be
here,
with
man.
you.
Deep this conversation. We finally got you on the platform,
That's
man.
right, man. I'm excited for this conversation, man. Thank you.
How's life been, man?
Life's great. Life is
good.
great. We're out here, working. We're working. We're, meeting people, building community, and keeping the work going, keeping the movement going. But it's going great, man. Gonna go see the family here soon, and seeing the mom and the little brother's graduating soon, man. So it's exciting, and we're out here doing the work.
So you're running for the House Representative District 49, Rutherford County. What have you learned about yourself so far, maybe that you didn't know from just being an organizer, right? And being a person in really grassroots, rooted in community, now kind of shifting into this more, very political space. You was always in a political space, but now you're trying to become a politic as a job, right? What have you learned about yourself, man, so far?
Man, that's a great question. I'll tell you what I've been saying is that no one knows best about building power from the ground up than the people who have been left out, the people that have been left aside. So coming from the organizing background, man, like coming into this new space, it is a tool, right? It's coming in with these experiences, these skills, this knowledge that is so important, right? And I want to bring that same energy, that same type of a vibe that comes from the organizing background into the political space.
Right.
I think that's what I've really found with this, man. I feel great that I come from the organizing background and just bringing in the years, the decades-long fight for justice that comes with that. You know what I mean? And bringing that to these political institutions that otherwise that space wouldn't be taken up. You know what I mean? So I think that's been one of the biggest things that I've realized is how incredible it is to come from the organizing background into this space. And something that I've been talking with some folks about is, if you're an organizer, you're watching this, man, like, and you feel like you need to take that step, do it, because you are equipped with the tools, the resources to make that happen, man.
Yeah. I ain't doing it. It's done. That messing with me. But I want to get you straight into it, man.
Yeah.
How would you describe right now our state, especially from the House level, man? Just what's been going on at legislative sessions and just over the last couple of years, man. How would you phrase what you've been seeing?
I think that it's a complete attack on the rights and the freedoms of everyday Tennesseans. I think that what we're seeing from our state's leadership, what we're seeing from extremist lawmakers, is a complete disregard of the real issues, man, to the real solutions that our communities are asking for.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing year after year after year is how the extremist lawmakers are choosing to play political games to score political points rather than prioritizing the lives of our children, our families, our communities.
Right.
And it's a complete disregard and neglect of the real things that are happening, right? I've been knocking on doors every day and talking to people, and man, I can't tell you how many times I've had the conversation with somebody that they're saying either I want to leave the state, or I'm calling up people and they're telling me, good luck. I already left the state last year, 2 years ago. They're like, I couldn't deal with it anymore.
Wow.
And we should not be living. I mean, Tennessee's beautiful, man. It's great. We have so much great people here, and community here.
Yeah.
And we should be doing everything that we possibly can to making it a place where everyone can belong and thrive.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing from our state legislature is instead of really putting the voices of the people at the forefront. A way that we saw that was this year, right? And last year with, the Covenant School shooting, right? We saw how moms, educators, students rallied at the Capitol every single day, man. They had a special session. We just finished our regular session in 2024 this year, and nothing's been done, right?
Yeah.
putting the interests of gun lobbyists in front of the interests of the people that are there pleading for change, pleading for justice. And instead of adhering and listening to those voices, we're seeing a complete disregard of the will of the people.
Man, you mentioned like the sense of belonging, right? As a community member, being an immigrant yourself, right? Where did you find that sense of belonging, right? Because as a person who lived abroad, right, I really got a different lens, right? When like when I went to Paraguay for Peace Corps, like damn,
That's
like
awesome,
I gotta learn a whole nother language, right? And so it's like, and like with the community that was so patient with me, and so like just so kind and caring, and but like as an American that hasn't lived anywhere else, I had to put it into perspective, like, oh, this is maybe how others that may be a refugee or immigrant that just come from a non-English speaking country, like this is maybe how they feel, right? And maybe look at myself, was I patient? Was I kind with them on their, just language barriers, right? And that whole language justice thing going a part of it, man. So I'm curious, man, how did you find this sense of belonging and just from a family dynamic in general, and what that looked like?
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. And one of the things that came to mind right now is this quote that I saw once that said, "There's dreams on both sides of the border." Right. And that really, really like stuck with me, because it's like, that's exactly right. There's people, I'm from Mexico, from Guadalajara, Mexico, and there's people that are traveling through deserts, through seas, man, to for the opportunity at a better life. Right. And people are going through life and death experiences to make that happen. To be able to provide for themselves and for their families, crossing literal and metaphorical borders to try to build that life, to build that community. And for me, we came to Knoxville, and we were running our family business, right? It was a restaurant. We came here to run the restaurant. My uncle was the first person to move here in our family. So he had built his family here and wanted to expand the business to Atlanta. And so he's like, we need a trusted person. Can you all come here talking to my mom, And so we came over here, and I didn't know English. I was 4 years old. I didn't know any English. I didn't think that would be like an issue, anything at all, And it's so funny.
At 4, he's like, I'm just going.
I'm just like, all right, let's do it. And my entire childhood was spent on the booths of that restaurant.
Wow.
And I remember very vivid stories of that, man. Like I remember the restaurant was situated right behind a putt-putt and like a mini golf, whatever, and driving range. So I'd go out back, and there was a fence, and I'd pick up some golf balls and just I'd look around for some golf balls and play by myself, sitting there like 4 or 5 year old at the restaurant. I remember this one story. I bounced the ball in the restaurant and it landed in some guy's huge margarita, and I was like, man, what am I doing? But that was my childhood.
That drink is free.
Exactly. So that is, and my mom will tell you that story. But that was my upbringing. Was spent watching my mom work day and night to be able to provide for us, and I learned English because of the fact that I would go up to the tables and just sit down, and I acted like they were my best friends. I'd walk up and be like, hey, what's up? And a family was like, hey, I didn't say that in English, obviously, but they took me in, they taught me English. And that is, to answer your question, man, that is the power that we have as a community to build these systems, to build these infrastructures of welcome, and we do that ourselves.
Did your mom ever, or any of the other family members ever give you that, well, maybe you're not really welcome here talk, or that experience of racism, or we're immigrants, it's not looked the same way? When did that become noticeable to you, or when did those talks start to happen for you? Yeah,
so I actually grew up in a very predominantly white neighborhood.
Really? In Knoxville? No way.
Couldn't be.
Couldn't be.
No. But no, in like one of the most predominantly white neighborhoods in Knoxville. And,
Shout out to Knoxville. No, it's all love Knoxville.
Go Vols, go Vols. No. But yeah, man. So that was my upbringing. But to me, because of how I saw my mom work so hard every day, and she did everything possible to make sure that I felt part of the community. Right.
Yeah.
She was, even though she was working night and day at the restaurant, she would leave, pick me up from school, or pick me up from football practice, baseball, basketball. She always had me involved in the community. And I owe everything to her, man. And I'm sure you've heard me talk about that, but I grew up there, and there was a story that my mom tells me of that one day she came to pick me up from school, and this was probably like kindergarten, first grade, and it was like a winter day. I had like my coat on, and she pulled up to the school, and I was like outside by myself. Like I didn't speak the language. I didn't have friends. I didn't have that. I mean, I was 5 years old still, but I mean, it's things like that still impact children and their lives, and they remember those. Like I remember that day, right? And thinking about that, and thinking about how these laws and these narratives that we're seeing coming from our state legislature impact those kids that were in those situations. You know what I mean? And but I think that when it really hit me was when I was about 15, 16 years old, and all of my friends, they were like, "Oh, I got my driver's license, I got my learner's permit," and so I went up to my mom and I was like, "Hey, like, I want to do this. Like, can we go sign up, take the class, whatever I need to do to get this?"
Yeah.
And that was when I found out that I was undocumented.
Wow.
And so that's when we had that conversation for the first time. We had that conversation for the first time, and she told me that based on a piece of paper, I was not able to move. I wasn't able to drive, go from one place to the other, and I had to live like that. That was the reality for some time. And then I think the other more prominent time that happened, the othering, that happened was whenever I was graduating high school, and all of my friends were getting their acceptance letters, getting accepted to their universities, getting their scholarships left and right. And there was an opportunity, right? There was an opportunity at our school, and they said, I think it was like the first year of that this program happened, but they said, okay, if you go to these 3 meetings, you're going to get your first 2 years of college for free.
Right.
I went to the first 2 meetings, and third meeting comes around, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling great. I was with my buddies. We walked in, went to go get food, came back, to the school, and they all went, "Hey, here's my name, okay, cool, you're good to go." And then I came up, and they were like, "You're not on the list." I was like, "What do you mean I'm not on the list?" And they were like, "Yeah, you're not on the list. You're not eligible for this scholarship." I was like, "What do you mean? Like, I graduated from the public school. Like, I've been here my whole entire. What do you mean? Like, what's going on? Like, there must be something."
Right.
And they said, "No, sorry. Based on your immigration status, you are not eligible."
Wow.
They said, "You need to go to the university, talk to them, because I don't know how to help you. You need to figure this out on your own."
Yeah.
And so that was one of the big moments, right? I went to the university. I found out that I wouldn't be eligible based on my immigration status. And thankfully, I was able to get plugged in with an organization in Knoxville called Centro Hispano. And it was a community, and then they said, "Hey, like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together." They said, "Go to this event that's happening next week." It was all very timely. They said, "Go to this." So I went to the event, and it was somebody who was sharing the exact same experience that I was going through. I felt like I was the only one. I felt so alone. And I heard them telling that exact same story. But more than that, not just telling the story, but saying how you can use your story to build power, right? And to use that as power. And I went up to him and I was like, "I want to know you. I want to do exactly what you're doing one day." And that's when I joined the fight for the immigrant rights movement. That's whenever the tuition equity, the tuition equality campaign started, where basically more than 10,000 students across the state of Tennessee were in that exact same situation.
Wow.
That based on their immigration status, they weren't eligible for in-state tuition or federal financial aid.
So what are your thoughts on that type of status, being an immigrant or refugee, coming into a country, understanding that the United States is a business, right? It's a business, and there's policies and rules, right?
Yep.
How do you navigate that? Potentially
Yeah.
being a politician, understanding there's a process in place,
Yeah.
and I don't know if we as a country in general, our system was just like, hey, everybody just you're welcome, come in, and it's not uncommon. Like every country has these type of policies in place, right? And if you haven't traveled, you could just think like, hey, like the United States is very strict on these. Like, oh, we're not the strictest. Like, but we're strict, but we're not the strictest. How do you navigate that, right? Understanding like, well, there's laws, but then it's like, man, it's like there's also human rights and just wanting people to be humanized and understanding that people are trying to get to a better situation. It's just like there's just a process in doing that, how our government is set up in such a way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we need to get back to the foundation of all of this, right? Which is that people want to be able to move, they want to be able to stay, and they want to be able to thrive.
Okay.
Right? They want to be able to live and work safely in their communities without having to live with fear, right? So to answer your question, right, we are seeing that we're operating within a system, the immigration system, that is completely broken. It is completely unjust, right? As a personal story, right, it took me more than 20 years to be able to be in the status that I'm at, right?
And that's not, you just was recognized as a citizen, 2 years ago?
So exactly. So, it took...
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much, man. And, it took more than 20 years for that. And to be able to be deemed a member of the society lawfully, right? And it's like, we are here. We are... building the fabric of our communities. We're bringing our culture, right, our traditions here, and that's all. We're working. We're working very hard, right, and something that I have always been about is that, like, I never tie my journey or any immigrant's journey based on their contributions, right? Although, if we want to get into the contributions, man, like that is absolutely, we are paying taxes. That's another misconception is that, they're not paying taxes. We are paying taxes. If we weren't paying taxes, the economy would crumble. You know what I mean? And it's like, those are these common misconceptions that we're seeing that, immigrants versus non-immigrants, refugees versus non-refugees are doing or aren't doing. You know what I mean? And it's going back to those basics of like, we are here, again, as I mentioned earlier, right? We are literally crossing life and death experiences to be able to be here at an opportunity at a better life,
Do you run into other immigrant or refugee voters that it's because there's always like there's a conversation right outside looking in, and then there's internal cultural conversations, right?
Oh yeah.
Internally, right? And it's like, well, I'm not like those other immigrants, right? Or I'm not like those other. Do you have those conversations or take the time to maybe have that dialogue with other immigrants that may feel discriminatory against others that look like them, right? Being anti-Latinx or anti-Black within their own like, do you have those dialogues or conversations, and what has, like, especially during your campaign, or had a chance to even talk about those?
Yeah, absolutely. There's the thing called the good versus bad immigrant narrative. Where it is because of these societal structures that we're operating within, we are, we something that's so common in immigrant families and immigrant people is that, we tie our accomplishments, our accolades, our awards, and everything to what our worth is. You know what I mean? Because our degrees. You know what I mean? And it's like, I have a PhD, and I was awarded, the Changemaker Award here. You know what I mean? And they're like, we are an upstanding member of our society, which is great, and like people should be chasing that,
Right.
you know. But I think that also we have to understand that that might not be the case for so many people, man. You know what I mean? Like, because of what we're seeing, that we're all here, and we're seeing how Black and brown people are left aside and left out.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we're all operating within that same system. You know what I mean? And it's like we have to be together and saying, hey, I want you to succeed just as much as I want to succeed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want you to be able to thrive just as much as I want to be able to thrive. I want you to be able to go back home and visit your family back home the same way I do. You know what I mean? And I think that that is what we've seen a lot, is that a lot of times in the immigrant rights movement, some communities will pit against each other or say, hey, why don't I get an expedited immigration relief when they did? You know what I mean? I've been here 20 years, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's not the mindset. That scarcity mindset is what is putting us back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We have to operate with a mindset of abundance and say there is plenty. Yeah. You know, I want you to have citizenship too. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because if you don't, like, you know what they say. I mean, the cliche, we're as strong as our weakest, whatever. You know what I mean?
So we're strong as our weakest link.
We have, we have to be uplifting one another and amplifying our voices and bringing that power together, because we have a very clear opposition. Right. You know what I mean? They don't care if we're, from Guatemala or if we're from Mexico, right? They see us as the same. Right. Right? And it's like, we have to make sure that we are saying, we are in this together. Right. You know what I mean? It's saying, no, like, we deserve rights. We deserve our freedoms. And we're going to come together to push for just that.
Yeah. Man, what I think is interesting about that piece of it is like the language justice piece of it, man. Yeah. About understanding that you have individuals that come from maybe Mexico or Guatemala, Costa Rica, that have these great professional titles, but due to the lack of just language, right, they can't be them best selves. They can't be in their profession. And so, man, during your campaign, have you had a chance to, of course, knock on doors of people who are not immigrants, but also maybe correct or give them a chance to understand, like, just because I'm an immigrant doesn't mean, like, one, we all fit this kind of box or a monolith, but also, like, maybe debunk some of their own implicit biases, about who maybe they think you are just because of what you look like. Have you been able to, one, just have those real conversations, or just get those kind of real, like, responses, like, yeah, I'm probably not going to vote for you just because, like, you're Latinx?
Absolutely. And something about our campaign is that we intentionally started our field way ahead of time, right? Yeah. Because we wanted to make sure that our campaign wasn't saying these are the issues that we think are important because we're seeing them all across the state, right? No, we wanted to go into the community, say, what are the issues important to you? That's what we're still doing right now, right? Yeah. Going into the community and saying, what are the most pressing issues to you, right? And that has been, like, the response that we've received from that has been incredible, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're like, oh, like, I was expecting you to, like, pitch me something, and they're like, man, I got to think about that. So I'm giving my phone number out, saying, call me, whatever you need. We want to be a voice for you, for all of us. And one of those instances, I had a couple people, directly say, oh, are you for open borders? You know what I mean? Like, they see, like, immigration, they see immigrant, and they immediately are going to the talking points that they're hearing, right, from whatever news outlets they get this from, you know what I mean? But, they go straight to that, and it's like, after I tell them, where I'm at, like, what we just talked about, right? Like, we want to be able to belong and thrive and be able to be a part of the community. Yeah. They're like, I share my story with them. And I'm like, this is how I got here. This is the reality for so many of us. Right. And that story can be seen, my story, the story of immigrants in Tennessee can be seen as a story all too familiar with everyday Tennesseans. Yeah. And that's what we've been trying to really hone in on, and that we've had a great response. After the conversation with this individual, and I'm thinking about it, they're like, "Oh, okay, great. Well, so great to meet you." And they were,
From the conversations, do you think like many just Tennesseans or Americans, do you think they have a more of an issue of like, hey, hold on, there needs to be like a process, like it's like it shouldn't just be open board, anybody can come over. Like that's what they have. That's the issue, but they don't have an issue of like people getting opportunities. Do you see like a distinct like kind of difference? Like there needs to be a system. Like if y'all come over here or immigrants or refugees here, great, but just coming over here illegally, that's the issue they have. Or is it kind of like blurred lines sometimes?
So we see it as kind of like 2 in 1.
Okay.
Right? So like they say like. They understand the opportunity piece. And they're like, yes, absolutely. We want to. Everyone should have the opportunity. Right. But they have to do it the right way. Is what we keep hearing. You know what I mean? Right.
And what is that?
Yeah. So that's the question. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, here and a big part of our campaign is that education piece. You know what I mean? Because of the fact that like, our communities have been underrepresented for years based on these curated, intentional structures to keep us underrepresented, right? So a big part of our campaign is that educational piece of like, here's where we're at, and here's the reality of these misconceptions that we keep hearing, right? So for example, I've had that conversation multiple times, especially in the, with the organizing background of, you got to do it the right way. You got to do it the right way. And what we say is that, like, we're not saying, necessarily no, but it's like the right way needs to be just. It needs to be fair. And, like, as a personal story, as I mentioned, right, it took me more than 20 plus years, man, to be able to do that. Yeah. That's someone's whole life, man. Like, that's 20 years that some families go. Like, my mom, she hasn't seen her dad, man, in like 10 years. He passed away recently. Right, she wasn't able to go to be there right by his side. She wasn't able to say, she didn't know that the last time they saw each other 10 plus years ago would be the last time they saw each other in person.
Wow, just based on
the current immigration system that we're operating within right now. Because of the fact that there's depending on where you're from, what immigration status you're applying for, the average wait times range from like 5 to 30 years.
And if I leave, I may not be able to.
You may never be able to make it back. Yeah, exactly, man. And like, so those are the type of conversations we're having, right? It's like, I hear you, right? But it's like, look at the facts, right? Look at, and this is just my own like personal anecdotes, but it's like, these are the reality for so many of us here, man. And it's like, again, going back to the basics, right? We just want to be able to work here, live here, play here, and in a way that we can have a successful life, right? And it's like, yes, like we want to be able to, as I mentioned, right? We want to have a learner's permit. We want to have a driver's license. We want to have our employment authorization, right? And it's like, but to get there, it's like we're already going through those systems of the right way, and it's like they're just it's unfathomable, man. Like for so many families.
Man, I want to get kind of like on some of your key issues, which I guess we've been talking about, but just even more detailed than just your campaign and kind of some of the things you're running on. And a lot of it is part of like what are you hearing from the community of District 49 in Rutherford County, like around education, around gun laws, around equity, around just economic, just prospering economically in general, man. What have those conversations been like? What are some of the things that maybe have shocked you that people care about? And some of the things that shock you that maybe people are really like, not so worried about. Maybe they should be,
Yeah. No, I love that question. And I think that, going back to what I've been mentioning, the fact that I am an immigrant, the fact that I come from the immigrant rights movement, we're not just fighting for immigrant rights, but we're fighting for the rights of all of us. Right. You know what I mean? And that is something so important for our campaign, is that like, we want to make sure that is the case, right? That we are, that folks, that voters, that people all across District 49 know that something that I've been saying, right, is that we're trying to build a Tennessee that works for you and for me, right?
I just thought about something I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
Because as a black and brown person, especially I think in politics, a lot of times we may find ourselves having to prove more than others that, hey, I'm just not doing this for Latinx people. I'm just not doing this for black people. I'm doing this for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Which is ironic that we would have to prove that like we're doing that.
Yeah.
But have you had to like navigate that and let people know like, yes, like I'm from Mexico, but I'm not running on just on behalf of all the Mexicans that live in that lives in Tennessee or just the Latinx. I'm running as an American citizen. I'm running to serve all Tennesseans in District 49.
100%. Yes.
That just hit me, man. For whatever reason, that just hit me like having to prove that to voters, like, you know, you should have your self-interest of your community, of your group in general, but it's like I have the self-interest of everybody in my community.
Man, I'll tell you what, I heard a great mentor of mine who I'm sure you know, and I'll be sending this over to them, but they said something that has always stuck with me, where we talk a lot about that we want to be able to thrive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That we want to be able to thrive, that immigrants want to be able to belong and thrive. And that has become a key message in my campaign, that we're fighting to create a Tennessee where we can all belong and thrive.
Yeah.
But we cannot thrive if our neighbor doesn't have enough food on the table to provide for themselves and their family.
All right.
We cannot thrive as a community if my other neighbor is having to decide whether or not to have to pay their medical bills or be able to send their child to childcare.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's so many of these interconnected pieces, man, that are like, you know what I mean? And it's like, we don't live single issue lives, so we cannot advocate for single issues, you know?
And that's like, I think, kind of the irony of it. A lot of times it's like, we say we want our neighbor to do well, right? But if you look at the scope of our country, that's not true.
Yeah.
Because like, if that's the case, if
you
look at those who are oppressed and marginalized, which are primarily those who like me and you, like, our country has shown like, no, like we really don't want you all to have the same just and equitable and inclusionary access to things as everyone else, right? And so it's like, it sounds good that we want all, like, you know, it sounds good, but it's like when it comes down to it, like, do you really want me to have the same opportunities and accesses to the things that you have? Do you really? You know? And so but it just made me think about that, man. It's like, like that identity thing. I think that, you know, when you're running as a black person or a Latinx person, having to, for whatever reason, like prove to other non-black or Latinx people, like, I'm just not running for you. But on the flip side, it's like you have this group that you know you represent. That's like, exactly, we're counting on you to do this specifically for us.
Absolutely, man. No, yeah. And that's a big thing that we've been, you know, like, when we come from these marginalized identities, we're not just, you know, like, I'm not just running, I never have seen our campaign as my campaign. You know, I might be the candidate, but like, we're doing this with our people. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I have expectations on me. Yeah. You know what I mean? I have expectations on myself. Yeah. And it's like, this campaign is our campaign. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then we're coming into this together, right? Yeah. And like, just the other day I was knocking doors and it was someone who, you know, started speaking to me in Spanish. Yeah. And I spoke Spanish back. Yeah. And like, their face just lit up, man. It's a whole different thing. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, they're like, wow, we've never seen this before. You know, we've never seen this. So yeah, man, it comes with, you know, those expectations and expectations that we know that we have to meet, right? That we know that our campaign is our campaign. But it's also, as you're mentioning, right, we've been seeing how our extremist lawmakers, our state's leadership, right, will say that they're for families, children, for all of Tennesseans. You know what I mean? but their actions are saying otherwise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's where I go to whenever I talk about this, that yes, I'm coming with the Latinx, the immigrant side, right? But it's
Right.
like, I truly,
Yeah.
I know that we can't thrive if we're not all thriving, right?
Yeah.
We know that we can't have fairness and justice if everyone else is not. You know what I mean?
What does that mean to you? Like, what is that justice, fairness, equity? What does kind of those things like mean to you when you just like take all the other stuff away from
Yeah.
it?
So to me, it means being able to have that shared power.
Okay.
You know what I mean? To me,
Yeah.
that means to have that shared power, regardless of where we come from,
Yeah.
regardless of what our immigration status says,
Right.
I think that for so long, and I hear it all the time of like, as an immigrant, right, as someone who has had to navigate systems that were designed without us in mind, right, as black and brown people, right, like historically we're navigating through these systems where we were left out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So every single second that we are in these spaces, right, the political spaces, advocacy, whatever it may be, right, we are taking up a space that otherwise would not be taken up by one of our people. You know what I mean? And it's like that to me is fairness and justice, to be able to have that equity, to be able to have that same seat at the table. And I something that I've said before is you hear a lot. The saying of like, if you don't have a seat at the table, you bring a folding chair, right? And I love that. I believe that was Miss Shirley Chisholm who said that. I believe, and but something that I like to say is, if you don't have a seat at the table, man, you build your own table, and you bring your people with you. Right? To me, that is what fairness and justice is, right?
Yeah, man. And I think for the communities that we come from, it's hard to build that table because of just the lack of access to the materials to build the table. And so a lot of times 100%. It's like, the access is like, man, if I can just get there, because building a whole table is like it's a big deal, even though that's the line of ideology that I think is best. Is like, let me just build my own table, and because things will start to change once they realize, like, oh, you got just as many tables now. Like, oh, you don't even want a seat at my like. We need like, but also that's that building your own power, right?
That's right.
Going back to some of these issues, issues. I know we got to kind of sidetrack a little bit. I mean, it was on my mind. I was like, he has to wrestle with this, like internally a little bit. But man, what are some major things like on your campaign that you're really focused on, and like kind of like that you can kind of go beyond what people can just go to the website and see too?
Absolutely.
Because I know that's a snapshot, and that's important. I think for people to understand, and then also it can be a red flag if a candidate doesn't have something that maybe should be on there, not on their website, right? So go check out Luis's website. Go do that. But also being able to give you a chance to maybe unpack some things that's on the website that people can't get just by simply going there. They got to have this conversation with you and really understand.
Absolutely, man. So I think, going back to what I had mentioned of the way that we're operating when we're talking to people is that we're asking them what issues are most important to them, right? And that is a way for us to be able to base our platform on the real issues happening at the most local level, right? We're going up to people's doorsteps and saying, what do you want to see from your state representative? You know what I mean? And so that's how we've been able to build our message, to build our platform, directly amplifying the voices of the people of the district, right? So what we're hearing is, I've had countless conversations with people that tell me the same thing, right? They say, the most important issue to me, right, is the fact that I have a child, we live in this new home, there's a school walking distance from our home, but because of the fact that school is underfunded, that school is now overcrowded. So there's no space for my child in that school. So now every morning I have to drive almost 20 minutes to take my child to school in almost an hour of traffic.
Wow.
And then drive almost another hour and a half from Rutherford County to work in Nashville.
Wow.
And so that right there is, the epitome of
Every day,
the issues of District 49, right? We see people that are being priced out of Nashville moving to District 49 every single day, man. There was a report that came out that Rutherford County is the fastest growing county in the entire state.
Yeah.
Right? We had almost close to 7,000 people in the past year alone that moved to Rutherford County. But the reality is that a lot of them still work in Nashville, right? So that commute of like almost an hour, 2 hours every single day, the lack of infrastructure, right? So those are like the two big pieces there.
And for people who may not know, can you give us like a picture of like where District 49 is in Rutherford County?
Yeah, so the district is just on the border of Davidson and Rutherford County, right? So it makes up the Laverne, Smyrna, Murfreesboro area.
Got it.
Right, so everything right there, the I-24 corridor, right? So that's why, folks are moving down to the district.
Right.
But they're still having to work in Nashville. So those two are the biggest pieces that we're seeing every day, right? Is infrastructure and education, right? And as it relates to infrastructure is how are we smartly and equitably and sustainably funding and managing our growth.
Yeah.
And the reality is that, this is an issue that's more prominent now.
Yeah.
Recently, right? We're seeing how it's like, oh my gosh, it's growing so much. Yes, that's the reality. We knew that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So our state leaders, our state delegation in Rutherford County should have proactively prepared for this. Right? And that's what we're seeing, man. It's just like our state's leadership, my opponent, right? They're out of touch with the real issues happening in our community.
Yeah.
They're not being proactive.
Yeah.
My opponent's been in office for 13 years. You know what I mean? And there's absolutely no reason why we should be hearing these things from people, right?
Yeah.
And but those are, the more, I think the way that we describe it is like those kitchen table issues, right?
Yeah.
The things that you talk about with your spouse or your children or whatever at the kitchen table, where you're like, man, that drive this morning, 2 hours this, like, you know what I mean? Like, gosh, or like, I can't, do we need to pick up another job to be able to, you know what I mean? And it's like going back to the basics of, people want to be paid well.
Yeah.
They want to have good health care. They want to have good schools, you know what I mean? And they want to feel safe in their community, and those are the real issues that we're hearing at the door. We're not hearing all the, you know what I mean? Like when I'm at the doors, and in the community and talking to people, something that I've noticed is that we're not hearing these things that were, these buzzwords, these political point issues, we're hearing these real everyday issues that are happening in our community every single day.
What changes if you're elected to state representative, District 49?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost is making sure that we're protecting and investing in our public education.
Okay.
I'm a proud product of our public schools. We are completely, stripping away the rights again, treating our educators without dignity and respect, right?
Yeah.
So that's priority number one, making sure that we are recommitting ourselves to investing in our educators and our education system, paying our teachers better. We have amongst the highest, the lowest rate of teacher pay in the country, right? So making sure that they are treated with dignity and respect. They are the ones that make our, that build our future. You know what I mean? And so that's number one. Number two is making sure that we find a way to fund our growth. And there are so many solutions for that.
Yeah.
For example, right now, the conversation that's happening is that our local governments are begging and have been begging our state delegation in Rutherford County to incorporate impact fees, right? However you feel about impact fees, whatever, you know what I mean? But the fact is that our local governments are trying to fight for the solutions, right? They're saying, okay, if developers are going to develop, they have to pay a scaling fee of a tax that will go directly into our communities, our schools, our parks, our roads. Again, whatever your stance,
Right.
people's stances are on impact fees. It's whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is the fact that there are real solutions out there that our local governments are asking for our state delegation. It's just making sure that we're coming together and saying, okay, here, what are the issues that are happening? How can we work together to make sure that these solutions are being implemented? Right. You know what I mean? That's number 2. Number 3 is making sure that I was marching and with our students, educators, and parents last year and years before, making sure that we are creating safe communities where we can all live free from the fear of gun violence. Yeah. Right. My opponent, our state leadership, are again putting the interests of gun lobbyists ahead of the lives of our children, families, and educators. Yeah. So it's making sure that we are passing common sense gun violence prevention, background checks. You know what I mean? Safe storage, red flag laws, all of that. And that's 3. Number 4 is man, here in Tennessee we have one of the most restrictive abortion laws in the country. Yeah. It's making sure that we're going up there, that we're fighting to repeal that, right? Because no politician should ever have a say in a decision between a person and their doctor. Yeah. Right? And that goes into the conversation of healthcare, equitable, affordable healthcare, right?
Yeah, precisely. Man, I want to leave you with anything, man, that maybe we didn't touch on that you want to even extrapolate more on about just maybe who you are, what you stand for, or just to your voters of District 49, man. Anything directly to them, and and like why they should cast their vote for you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I think we deserve better. Tennesseans in District 49 and across our state deserve so much better. We deserve to have leaders that will fight boldly and unapologetically for us to be able to have a roof over our heads, to have food on the table, to pay our medical bills, to have childcare, to be able to belong and thrive in our community, right? And for far too long, our state's leadership and extremist lawmakers have been out of touch with the reality of the real issues that's happening here in District 49 and across our state. And it's time for us to make sure that we are fighting, together and at the ballot box November 5th for the general, August 1st for the primary, to make sure that we are truly stepping up. As my mom taught me, right? If you want change, you don't wait for it, you fight for it. And right now we need change in our communities.
Yep. Luis.
Thank you, bud.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, man. And good luck on everything in the campaign. And, I'm always here to support whatever I can, man. And, build power, man. We go back. We go way back before this.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? We was doing different things. We was out in the streets, really, building power together. But nah, and he's usually clean and fresh. He didn't even bring a jacket today, which is crazy. He usually in a jacket the whole day.
I know, man.
But nah, man, I appreciate you, man, and keep doing the work, man, and suerte.
Absolutely, man. I think just the last thing I want to end on, right, is that point that you just brought up, right? Yeah. It's like, we've been building power together, man, for years, right? Yeah. And that's, that's what we've been doing, right? Yeah. We've been out here, we've been building this infrastructure. Yeah. They say that I would become the first ever Latino immigrant state legislator in Tennessee history, right? Yeah. But I'm not running to make history, I'm running to make change, right? And if this campaign isn't fighting to build the infrastructure, to build that power for me not to be the last, right, then it means nothing, right? So it's making sure that we understand that we have been building power for years. We're going to continue to build power, right, in the streets and at the state capitol. You know what I mean?
Hey, so I ain't gonna lie though, that first ever sounds good, don't it? The first ever, though. But nah, man. But most definitely, man. Most definitely. And hey, y'all just check them out. That's and people can. How can people reach out? How can people contact you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah. So you can reach us at our website, voteluismata.com, and follow us on all social media platforms. At voteluismata.com, and I hope to earn your support. We are up against a 13-year incumbent. We know that the power of the people is stronger than those people in power, right? So we will come together. If you can donate to our campaign, contribute to our campaign, any amount goes such a long way. Join us, be a part of our movement. Come knock doors with us. We'll be out there all throughout the election cycle, and I hope that we can come together and build this movement together, man.
All right, man. Next time.
Thank you, bro.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, man.